Okay, you are not going to believe this story. It sounds like something straight out of an adventure movie. Archaeologists over in Turkey think they are getting really close to finding the original tomb of the actual person who inspired the legend of Santa Claus. But the real question is,
Have they actually found it? I mean, for real. In the ancient town of Demre, a newly discovered sarcophagus is kicking off a huge debate and might just rewrite a piece of history that, honestly, we all thought was pretty much settled.
So, to really get why this is such a massive deal, we first need to separate the man from the myth. We're not talking about a guy with a workshop at the North Pole. We're talking about a real-life historical figure.
let me introduce you to St. Nicholas of Myra. He was a real guy, a bishop in the Roman Empire way back in the 4th century, in a place we now call Turkey. And he was famous even back then for being incredibly devout and, you guessed it, for his habit of secretly giving gifts.
And the stories about him? Oh, they are incredible. These medieval tales are what made him a legend. The most famous one is about him secretly leaving bags of gold for 3 poor sisters who couldn't afford a dowry. Without his gift, they would have been sold into servitude. It's that specific story of secret gift-giving that really is the heart of our whole Santa Claus tradition.
So if he was buried in his church, what's the big mystery? Why is finding his tomb so hard? Well, this is where the story gets wild. It involves a 1,000-year-old heist, part of a crazy medieval competition to own the most important religious relics.
For hundreds of years, the official story was pretty straightforward. St. Nicholas dies around 343 AD. He's buried in his church in Myra. Simple. But then, in 1087, a group of Italian sailors literally break into the church, steal most of his bones, and haul them back to Bari, Italy, where they've been ever since. So, case closed, right? Well, maybe not.
And it's because his story and his relics traveled that he became such a global icon. For instance, Dutch migrants brought the tradition of St. Nicholas to America, and over time that name just sort of morphed into Sinterklaas, and eventually the Santa Claus that we all know today.
And here is where we get a major plot twist. That story about him being buried in Myra, the one everyone accepted for centuries, it might not be the whole picture. Archaeologists have this other really compelling theory about where he was first buried.
So, you've got 2 possibilities here. On one hand, you have the Myra theory, which is the most documented. He was the bishop there, and that's where the bone thieves said they went. But then there's Gemala Island. In the Middle Ages, sailors literally called it St. Nicholas Island. The theory goes that he was first buried there, which makes a ton of sense for the patron saint of sailors, and his body was only moved inland to Myra in the 7th century to keep it safe from Arab raids.
So for centuries, people have been debating Myra or Gemala Island. But now, brand new discoveries back in Demre, which is ancient Myra, are pointing right back to that original church with some seriously compelling evidence. It's causing a huge stir.
This quote really says it all. The researchers have actually uncovered the original floor of the 4th century church. I'm talking about the very tiles that St. Nicholas himself would have walked on. It's an incredible direct link back to his lifetime.
It's like they're putting together a 1,700-year-old puzzle. They found a fresco of Jesus that they think marks the original spot of his coffin. They found a floor tile with the Greek word for grace on it, which might pinpoint the exact grave. The church design even seems to copy a famous one in Jerusalem. But the biggest clue of all, an actual sarcophagus.
And here's why they're so hopeful. It all comes down to the details. The sarcophagus they found is made from local limestone, and its design, especially that pitched roof-like lid, is a perfect match for the Roman era, exactly when St. Nicholas died. It's in the right place, and it's from the right time. So, okay, they have a coffin, but the mystery isn't over just yet. Now the whole investigation moves from the dirt into the lab. This is where science is going to try and give us the final answers that historians have been arguing about for centuries.
So what's next? Well, first, the team is going to very carefully expose the entire burial chamber. What they're really hoping for, their biggest wish, is to find an inscription on it with a name. After that, any remains they find inside will go through a whole battery of tests, including carbon dating, to see just how old they are. I think this quote from a Turkish official just sums it all up perfectly. They're being very careful. They're not ready to make any huge declarations just yet, but you can tell they know the evidence is pointing in a very, very exciting direction. It's all cautious optimism right now. Just think about that number for a second.
We are talking about possibly solving a historical puzzle that is nearly 1,700 years old. Confirming this tomb would be absolutely monumental for history, for faith, and for Turkey, giving us a direct physical connection to one of the most beloved figures in the entire world.
And so that's the question we're left with. As the archaeologists and scientists keep doing their work, the rest of us are watching, waiting to see if a story we all thought was a cold case is about to get a brand new, stunning final chapter. The verdict on Santa's tomb is still out.